We love our Star Trek references, whether they be old or new Trek, but the new animated series Lower Decks, which arrived yesterday, is filled to the brim with fantastic references, so let's dive in and see what we can find. Hey everyone, my name is Commander Bree, and welcome to Trek Central. Before we warp in, if you're new around here, then make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video. We'll be here every week reviewing brand new episodes from Star Trek Lower Decks as they air, and looking for all of those references contained within. Also, on Sundays at 9 p.m. BST, catch us live on YouTube as we discuss the new episodes with special guests and answer your questions. Looking forward to seeing you there. Spoiler warning! We're going to be discussing elements from the first episode of Lower Decks, so be warned, there will be spoilers for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 1. Again, you have been warned. Now, warp speed. First up, the space station we see at the very beginning of our first episode of Lower Decks. Douglas Space Station is a space dock type space station, similar to that of Earth's space dock, which was first introduced in the movie Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. It is great to see this variant of Starbase again, as even though it was used multiple times in The Next Generation, it was usually the same shot with the planet graded in a different color. But with animation, it can easily be shown in different places and not as blatantly reused. In the closet in which Brad Boimler is giving his captain's log, we can see a medical symbol. This symbol has been used numerous times in Trek, and it's great to see little details like this which help make the ship feel real and lived in. Mariner appears drunk off Romulan whiskey, which seems to be just as intoxicating as its Romulan ale counterpart, and just as illegal. Mariner mentions that it's weird that it isn't green, which is probably a reference to Aldebaran whiskey, which is green. While drunk, Mariner swings around a batleth, a Klingon weapon which has been seen since The Next Generation. She says she got it from a Klingon with an eye patch, with a notorious eye patch wearing Klingon being General Chang from Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. And that isn't the only thing Mariner has in her crate of contraband goods. There's a Ligolian glaive, a weapon seen in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Code of Honor, and a Saurian brandy bottle from the original series. In the hilarious opening, we see a fleet of Romulan D-Deridex battlecruisers fighting a group of Borg cubes. It's great to see some D-Deridex back in action, and could further explain the Borg presence in Romulan space, which would culminate in a Borg cube assimilating the Romulan scout ship Shaynor and being disconnected from the collective and eventually turned into the artifact which we see in Star Trek Picard. Most Starfleet shuttles have a similar naming convention, with DS9's shuttle being named after Earth rivers and Enterprise's being named after famous explorers. The USS Cerritos shuttles are named after national parks found in the US state of California, namely Joshua Tree, Redwood, Yosemite, and Death Valley. This makes sense as the Cerritos is a California-class starship. We also get to see Argo buggies in use on the USS Cerritos. In the shuttle bay, we see an engineer officer wearing a turban, presumably a Sikh, with Starfleet allowing their officers to wear religious and cultural garb over their Starfleet uniforms, whether it's a Bajoran earring or Klingon sashes. However, this was not always the case, as Ro Laren had to take off her Bajoran earring when she came aboard the USS Enterprise in The Next Generation. It's nice to see a Bajoran officer in Lower Decks being able to wear his Bajoran earring. On Tendi's shuttlecraft is a female ensign wearing a similar visor to that of Geordi LaForge, chief engineer of the USS Enterprise. In New Star Trek, we have seen an evolution of visors, with an early form of the visor being present on the USS Discovery in Star Trek Discovery. Coming off of the shuttlecraft, Ensign Tendi is carrying a cylindrical bag, which was a common Starfleet bag used in The Next Generation, which is hard and it doesn't seem to be the best for actually carrying items. Behind Ensign Tendi, we see a Benzite officer. These species require breathing apparatuses as they are unable to breathe the standard oxygen-nitrogen-based atmosphere. This is similar to the Barzan species, which were also introduced in The Next Generation and require a breathing apparatus to breathe aboard Starfleet ships, with a recent Barzan being Commander Nan in Star Trek Discovery. Sonic showers are referenced by Boimler, which we've seen in previous Star Trek shows. These showers use sonic waves to clean you in order to conserve water. And talking about water, Cetacean Ops is finally fully referenced in a Star Trek TV show. Cetacean Ops is an area that houses dolphins that assist in the navigation of starships. This department doesn't seem to be overly common, but was present on the schematics of the USS Enterprise D. And keeping with the water theme, on the holodeck, Mariner asks the computer to simulate a beach in Hawaii. Ensign Tendi apparently has never been to a beach and asks what sand is, with Boimler saying, "Sand, it gets everywhere and gives you a rash," which I guess is Star Trek's variant of the iconic Star Wars Episode II Attack of the Clones line by Anakin Skywalker.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
With Orions having been present in Star Trek since the unaired pilot The Cage, it's remarkable that this is the very first time we see what the planet of Orion looks like. It is definitely less piratey than we would expect from a species that are notorious as pirates and lowlives, but I guess we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. The away team beams down with the assistance of pattern enhancers, pieces of technology that can assist in transportation. These have been used ever since The Next Generation, with earlier, bulkier prototypes being shown in Star Trek Discovery. We get to see the Argo buggies in use on the USS Cerritos. These buggies were first introduced in Star Trek Nemesis, which canonically only happened a year before the events of Lower Decks. It is good to see these buggies actually being shown and used well, and not just as an excuse for Captain Picard to have a drive around in the dunes.
I will always be puzzled by the human predilection for piloting vehicles at unsafe velocities.
On Commander Ransom's away team is a Bolian, a species first introduced in The Next Generation. Most Bolians are blue, however, we were recently introduced to a red Bolian in Star Trek Picard, which seems to be a subspecies of Bolian. In the background of the captain's ready room is a flag of the state of California. It's in tatters, probably suggesting that it originated from before World War III, and maybe that after World War III the state of California doesn't even exist. We know that many governments didn't exist after the last World War, and it was only until 2063 that first contact happened with the Vulcans and a united Earth government was formed. On the captain's bookcase is a model of the USS Cerritos, with most captains having ship models in their ready rooms. Most notoriously being the briefing room of the USS Enterprise E, containing ship models of all of the previous ships to bear the name Enterprise. Ensign Rutherford makes mention that his implant is Vulcan in origin, which explains why the earpiece is pointy. But also, it's hilarious that it helps to suppress emotion, which I'm sure Rutherford didn't want when he got this implant. The chief medical officer on the USS Cerritos is Dr. T'Ana, a Cation woman, with the Cations first being introduced in Star Trek the Animated Series. They also appear in Star Trek VI: The Voyage Home as a member of the Federation Council. I wonder if we'll see any other animated series species, such as the Kzinti, which were recently referenced in Star Trek Picard, or my personal favorite, the Edosians. Ensign Mariner said she was put in a Klingon prison where she had to fight a fellow prisoner for her own shoes. A similar thing happened to Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy when they were sent to Rura Penthe and an alien wanted their clothes. Klingon prisons are tough, so it is expected that the prisoners would have to fight each other for clothes. Ensign Mariner used to serve aboard the USS Quito, a ship named after the capital of Ecuador, Quito. With the ship having performed first contact with the Gallardonians in 2379, the same year that Star Trek Nemesis takes place. Similar to what happens in Star Trek First Contact, Ensign Rutherford and Barnes don EVA suits and walk along the hull of the ship to move between decks. These EVA suits are exactly the same type as seen in First Contact. This makes sense considering that the episode is called Second Contact. Ensign Barnes refers to the band The Monkees as a classical band. I'm sure many things from this century are referred to as classical by the time of the 24th century. This might also be a reference to Star Trek Beyond, in which McCoy references the Beastie Boys as classical music. Security Chief Shax is rocking a half-torn uniform that only Captain Kirk could pull off, a staple of fight scenes from the original series. Dr. T'Ana distributes the rage virus vaccine through the ship's ventilation systems, a similar technique to what the Doctor did in the episode Message in a Bottle when he distributed neurazine gas through the USS Prometheus ventilation system in order to knock out the Romulans on board. Also on Captain Freeman's bookcase is a baseball in a box, similar to the baseball Captain Sisko keeps at Deep Space Nine. Baseball made a massive comeback in the 24th century, with notable baseball teams being the Vulcan Logicans, the Niners from Deep Space Nine, and the Pike City Pioneers. Mariner, upon taking Boimler under her wing, calls him her Chadish. In Klingon society, if someone challenges a ruling of the Klingon High Council, a Klingon has to choose a Chadish to fight for them. The most notable Chadish was Captain Picard, who served as Worf's Chadish when Worf challenged the ruling on his father. Mariner asks if Boimler knew that Spock had died and come back to life on the Genesis planet, and that he rescued whales. All events that happened in the Star Trek movies: The Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home. Mariner also mentions Sulu, saying that he rocked a sword, which is a famous scene from the original series The Naked Time, where Sulu goes crazy and fences people whilst topless. And further names mentioned are Kirk, Worf, Deanna Troi, and finally Gary Mitchell, who became a godlike being and eventually was killed by Kirk in the original series episode Where No Man Has Gone Before. And that's it. Those were all the Easter eggs that we could pick out in the first episode of the new Star Trek animated series, Star Trek Lower Decks. This episode was full of Easter eggs, and if it's any indication of the series as a whole, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more. Did you see anything in the episode that we didn't mention? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. You can also find us on social media for daily updates, and even join myself and the rest of the crew on our Discord, so check the description for the links. As always, I've been Commander Bree, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.